When it comes to getting control of the stuff in our home, I find a few of the same myths spewed over and over again when I get comments from people or messages from followers, and many of these are lies, and they're ones that I thought or believed at one time myself too. So today let's break down the top decluttering lies that you are telling yourself that definitely are not true. Number one, I have to be a minimalist. I've said it once and I'll say it again. I'm not a minimalist, and I'm never going to pretend that I am one. And you don't need to be a minimalist to become a regular declutterer or to live with less, even way less. I'm not a minimalist, but I'm very conscious about the things in my home. I'm intentional about my space. I focus on all of my things truly serving me. I've become extremely good at letting things go that are just bogging me down and taking more time to manage than I want. And I have become very intentional with my stuff, and you can learn to declutter and have less without living a minimalist life. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing. Lie number two, it's gonna just get messy again. It is going to get messy again. But that's still sort of a lie because you're looking at it the wrong way. You are living in a space, so it's not going to stay exactly how it is all of the time, right? You are living in here and eating in here and cooking in here and hopefully having friends and making memories. So everything needs maintenance, but if you become really good about frequent decluttering, it's going to be so much easier to maintain. So yes, you can spend some time decluttering and it probably will get messy again, but it's going to get so much less messy and it's going to take so much less time to then declutter it. If you think about it as a pile that's hit this high and you declutter it down to here, the next time it gets messy again, you're only up to here again, as opposed to if you just ignore it and just let it keep getting messy and messy, then eventually it's completely out of your control and you're looking at something that is adding extra stress and anxiety to your life and you really never know when you're gonna get to it. Number three, my spouse is the problem. I love this one because I love my husband, but he isn't exactly a shining example of tidy. But there are a few reasons why blaming our spouse is not a viable excuse. First up, something is better than nothing. Think about it this way, what's worse? Having a bedroom where both nightstands are a mess, the floor is scattered with clothes, there's a laundry hamper with clean clothes still waiting to be put away, they've been sitting there for a week, or one where just one nightstand has some stuff on it and there's some dirty sweatpants by that side of the bed. The first one, right? Saying, I'm just gonna be messy because my spouse isn't the solution. Doing something is better than doing nothing. And having a room somewhat tidy is better than not having it tidy at all. Now, the second reason is I find either you can reflect their actions or they can reflect yours. Have you ever heard the saying, you are the 5 people you surround yourself with? The idea here is if you surround yourself with 5 successful people, you'll become successful or more successful. If you surround yourself with 5 lazy people, you are going to become more lazy and less motivated. You and your spouse can feed off each other in the same way. If you make an active choice to be more tidy and have less clutter, eventually it's gonna rub off on your spouse. I'm not saying they're going to get as on board about it with you and declutter and clean as much as you, but by them being surrounded by someone who is tidy, it can naturally make them more tidy. And finally, my last sort of reasoning when it comes to blaming our spouse is you're not gonna change your spouse. And assuming that they care about living in a decluttered space as much as you is really unfair to them. You're making them responsible for your desires. The truth is, clutter just might not bother your spouse as much as it bothers you. And they might not ever wanna declutter as much as you do or be as bothered by the mess. Instead, I think it's about finding compromise. My husband has learned that excess stuff and clutter really bothers me. It makes it hard for me to concentrate and it sort of stresses me out, and thus he helps tidy and clean more than he might if he lived alone because he knows that it helps me. But it's not a one-way street and he's not the one responsible for my happiness, so I meet him in the middle. I don't nag him constantly or whine or get resentful when he doesn't jump up to help me pick up a mess or get upset that he doesn't read my mind and immediately complete a chore that I want him to do. You can't blame your spouse for this. At the end of the day, something is better than nothing. You can either reflect their actions or they can reflect yours. And remember, you can't change your spouse, so start with yourself. Quick break for me to tell you about the sponsor for today's video, which is Cook Unity. Now, Cook Unity is the first ever chef-to-consumer platform that delivers fully prepared meals that are pre-selected by you directly to your doorstep. These are innovative, fresh recipes that are made by chefs in regional micro kitchens, and best yet, all you gotta do is warm them up. On their site, you can search through their variety of options with over 7 different dietary preferences to choose your own meals. Like I said, they come fully cooked. All you have to do is warm them up. And if you're wondering how good can reheated food really be, I can tell you that everything I've gotten from Cook Unity has been so delicious. And I have had weeks and weeks and weeks of meals with no duds. So an example of the meal I'm having here is the leek and mushroom breakfast quiche with green beans, crafted by Chef Irvin Paredes. The subscription is super flexible. You can pause, skip weeks, or even cancel at any time. If you're interested in trying out Cook Unity for yourself, go ahead and click the link in the description box down below. Make sure to use my code right here, ButFirstCoffee50, for 50% off your first order. Next lie, it'll take too long. I think time is probably the biggest roadblock many of us face when it comes to decluttering. The tricky thing about seeing clutter or a mess that needs tending to is it almost instantly gives us stress. It feels overwhelming, like we need to devote a lot of time to it. But truthfully, you can crack away at things in really small stages. It doesn't have to be this big, time-consuming declutter. And I honestly find that doing it in smaller stages is actually way more effective. By breaking up decluttering into smaller tasks, you're doing it more often instead of doing it just one time. So you're creating a habit. If you declutter a little every day, you're creating a habit of tidying and decluttering. If every day at lunch you spend 10 minutes tidying, after a little while, you'll start to tidy at lunch habitually without even having to really think about it. Decluttering doesn't have to be this big, time-consuming task. It can, and I think should, be broken down into very small, digestible bits. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 7 minutes here, and eventually it will all add up. And that brings me to my next point, which is thinking that we have to do it all at once. The other day I was down in my basement. After surviving the holidays and hosting 4 different holiday events, my basement had seen better days. And I would have loved to really just plow through it all in one day, but I didn't have 4 hours to devote to just organizing and rearranging my basement. And sometimes that feels really annoying or irritating because as humans, when we start a project, we really like to see it finished. It is what tends to give us that feeling of satisfaction and release of dopamine. So stopping mid-progress tends to be just irritating. But there's nothing wrong with breaking it up into pieces. I did not finish the basement that morning, but I set a recurring alarm on my calendar for every other Thursday to spend 1 hour down there until I get it done. So now over the next few weeks, I can devote a little time and get it back to where I really want it. The next lie is I will regret getting rid of this. It feels really secure to hold on to something knowing that we'll have it if we need it. What if we got rid of it and then we couldn't find a replacement? What if we need it later and we don't have the money for it? Not to mention, what if an item has value? It's hard to let go of something if it's practical. So in our mind, surely it's better to hold on to it just in case you do need it. But here's the problem with stuff that we keep just in case. There's just too much of it because it's too easy to keep pretty much everything just in case you might need it. And the truth is, for most of us, the problem isn't that we have too little, it's that we have too much, and everything you keep takes up your time, your space, and your attention. Now, using your time, space, and attention to keep items of value is a fair trade-off. Items you're using your time, space, and attention to keep, but in turn they are providing you daily or weekly value. But just in case items don't really tend to give us that same trade-off. We tend to have to store and manage them and almost never end up using them. You're still using your time, space, and attention to tend to them, but the likelihood that you'll get the return on that is very little. There's actually a stat from the National Association of Productivity and Organizing Professionals that says that 80% of the stuff we keep, we never use. 80%. That means most of the stuff that you're keeping just in case is weighing you down without giving you any return. And the final decluttering lie, we are telling ourselves that if it's not picture perfect, I failed. And I think a lot of this probably stems from seeing all these like really beautiful, decluttered and organized spaces online. And certainly I love these. I think they can be really great inspiration and motivation to get us to declutter into organized spaces. But lots of times our homes are not gonna look exactly like that. Striving for perfectionism is a lost cause because not only is perfectionism completely unattainable in a house where people actually like live and breathe and like cook food and raise children, but it's a huge hindrance because if you are trying to reach perfectionism, which is something you never actually really can get to, you're just going to be left sort of feeling defeated all of the time. Instead, you should be focusing on any successes that you have made and any progress that you have made, and remembering that it's always something about maintenance. It's not about just getting to this one point of perfection and then you are done, but it's instead about the daily maintenance of taking care of it and keeping on top of it. All right, my friends, that does it. That is some of the most common decluttering lies and myths that I have heard in my comments and that I get in my questions, and many that I used to believe myself. I hope that this helped you and maybe inspired you a little bit to get to doing some decluttering. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you are having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and to others, and I will see you all in my next video.